1, 2, 3, 4, get my shoes and out the door. 5, I'm alive. 6, 7, 8, feeling great. 9, gonna shine, life is good. I'm doing fine. 10, gonna do it right and do it again.
Hello and welcome to the EFM Health Club Podcast for another week. We are down Michael Jewson today. He's unfortunately unable to make it with us, but Wade Brady, welcome for another week.
Or
Afternoon, wherever you are. And we say afternoon because we have a very special guest today, Tom Swales, all the way from Toronto in Canada. Tom is a founder of Com Physio in Toronto and also of AMT Certified, which is a advanced movement therapies certification online. We will go through all of that in a little bit later. But Tom, welcome. Thank you very, very much for being on.
Thanks for having me, fellas.
Yeah, so Tom, your background, you've been a physio for about 20 years plus, and you have branched into teaching physios and other therapists. Your background's really interesting. You've trained and treated everyone from Olympians all the way through to the average person, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So based on that wealth of information, let's start really broadly. What do you need people to know? What's the biggest thing that you think is a little misunderstood about the human body, movement, therapy? I know I'm giving you a broad topic here. What would you like people to, if they take nothing else away, what do they need to know?
Regardless of where you come in on the spectrum of movement, performance, rehabilitation, we're all dealing with human beings, right? We're all dealing with their own individual stories, their own belief systems, but also their own levels of movement and fitness. And once we start to distill down what the human being needs, then it gets a little bit simpler as to what does the individual human being need. So what I mean by that is every conversation that we have, we got to build that trust, that connection, that safety, right? So what are we dealing with? The psychology of the individual. We have to break old beliefs. Oh, well, my therapist said I should never lift weights. I should never do this again. I'm like, why? Like, you have to move and lift things in the real world. So why wouldn't you do that in a controlled setting? So once we start to break down those barriers, those beliefs, and now we created trust. Well, now that we created the trust, now we're going to affect the person's nervous system. Okay, I can trust this person. Nervous system starts to calm down. Now let's look at how you move. Can you just basically touch your toes, stand on one leg, rotate? Like, what's the body doing? And the body's going to tell us, you know what, you're not rotating very well to that one side. Let's figure out why. That could be contributing to your low back, your neck issues. So then you start breaking down the pieces. And then you start looking at, oh, you know what? Your hip's not rotating. That's why you have the low back issues, right? So instead of treating and focusing on the low back, we just need to do some joint lobes. And it doesn't matter if you're the world's strongest man or an 85-year-old lady or a baby who just has some torticollis issues or some avoidance issues. Once we start to look at, what makes up the human being, that being psychology, neurology, biology, chemistry, and physics, then we can start to see, this little baby over here, they have this torticollis because mom holds them on this side and their visual system is avoiding this side. So all of a sudden we get baby to start tracking stuff and all of a sudden they start rolling and their neck releases. Or, working with the world's strongest man, he's got right side pain issues, but he can't balance on his left leg and his eyes don't track to the left. So now all of a sudden we get eye tracking going, neck stabilized, open up the hip, and now he can squat pain-free 800 pounds. Cool. And then you have a little 85-year-old lady who's worried about balance issues, falling, posture, strength. Well, we're going to get her to deadlift. We're going to get her to carry stuff. We're going to put her in the agility ladder, and we're going to walk across a balance beam. So we just talked about 3 different human beings, but what we did is we took, what was deemed as rehab and applied it to a high-performance individual to unlock their nervous system and balance out their body. And then we applied high performance to the 85-year-old lady who just needs to lift stuff and move with more confidence. And then the little baby, we don't need to release anything. We just need to get their visual system tracking in the right direction to encourage these muscles on the tight side to let go. And then all of a sudden they start rolling. So it's just looking through these lenses of older disciplines. And then once you start looking through those lenses, then you can figure out exactly what that individual in front of you needs. Because the world's strongest man doesn't need me to show him how to squat differently. He's doing a good enough job. But what he needs me to do is unlock or remove that pain or balance out his system so his nervous system stops protecting that side and now we're distributing forces evenly. And now his brain's like, oh, okay, this feels different. Now we can lift heavier weight.
Mm. Do you think so? In the past, if the world's strongest man had like a hip pain on his right, then all of the focus would have been like, let's just treat this right hip.
That's the common thing is let's just chase and treat pain. Yeah. Very rarely is where the painful area of the problem. It is often someplace else. And for him, it was actually his left side. So his eyes, when we were working with him, when we did eye tracking exercise, his left eye couldn't hold on and his left single leg balance was crappy and he couldn't roll to the left. So he had these kind of fundamental, like top-down neurology control issues on the left side. And as soon as we started dialing those in, showed him where his, gave him a little band exercise to squat with for his neck. He texted me the next day, hey, I just PR'd my back squat for 4 reps, no pain. I said, amazing. And that was one session. But it's because I took a step back. I'm like, yeah, we have knee pain, hip pain, low back pain. But I'm like, it's the other side's fault. It's your brain not dialing in this left side. So guess what he's doing? His brain's like, well, this side's the strong side. Let's just keep loading this one. Let's ignore what's weak and let's keep loading what's strong. But then all of a sudden now we have an overuse problem. It's not an overuse problem. It's an energy use problem. He's not loading up. He's not distributing that load evenly across his body. So he's compressing that painful side more because his brain knows that's the safer side.
Yeah.
When we are confronted with people in our clubs that have a complaint, I don't know where to send them to get the best help. Like, I wish I knew where to send them, but I feel there's 3, there's physio, there's chiro and osteopath.
Sure.
So, that they all exist. There's obviously a place for all 3, and there might be a 4th one like a podiatrist.
Yeah.
Could you just, in your words, explain the difference between those 3 or 4? Chiro, physio, osteopath, and podiatry?
So osteopath, at least in Canada, I can speak on Canada, and we have one of my good friends, he works here, he's an osteopath. They look at the body through systems. So the craniosacral system, the visceral organ system, the fascial system, lymphatic system. So they work on 4 systems. What they do is they look at the body a little bit holistically to see, where things are not moving, to rebalance the body. And they use very gentle touch. And sometimes, Corey, who works here, he's magic. Like sometimes you don't even know what he's doing. And then all of a sudden, oh, my pain's gone. But he's very gently working with the body and the nervous system and kind of recalibrating, right? He's applying what the body needs to balance out. Chiropractic, depending on, there's a couple different schools of thoughts. Like they have this, you have your traditional, they just focus on the spine. Everything comes out of the spine, all the nerves. So if there's spine dysfunction, there's orthopedic pain and problems and whatnot, right? So they'll focus mainly on adjusting those areas. And then, some mix it up, some add exercises, some do needling, but they're basically spinal focused. Everything comes from the center nervous system and the spine. And then physios can be an odd bunch because our scope of practice is so broad and we do so many different things that it can be confusing as to know what we actually do. So then you have your kind of your orthopedic specialists who work with the orthopedic pain and injuries. Maybe hopefully they apply exercise and strength training to that. You have hospital, you've got geriatric, you have pediatric, you have pelvic floor. So it really depends. Across all 3 of those, I would say, pick the person who is really good with manual therapy, who can look at the body and find the problem, not just treat the pain and cause, because the cause and pain are typically different places, and who loads it, who does proper exercise. And I don't mean like, do some banded exercises for the shoulders and lift 5-pound weights. I mean, like, are they, if you just improve their toe touch because you release their hip, I hope they're doing deadlifts with a good amount of weight to lock that into place. Because if you don't load what you just changed, the nervous system goes right back to what it knows. And it goes back to those old patterns. So adding the load, retraining the movement patterns, adding the load, that's the change that will make it permanent. But if we don't train the brain and the nervous system to move differently after those manual resets on the table, person comes back 2 days later, my pain's back. Well, no kidding, because you started walking and moving around your world and your brain just kept using the same muscle pattern that it knew that caused the problem in the first place.
Yeah.
So when you're looking for a referral, find out who's blending manual therapy and movement therapy together effectively.
Yeah, with my brief experience of visiting physios, if there's a gym attached to the physio, I'm in.
Cool.
I love that. I think
Great.
it makes all the sense and it backs up
Yep.
everything you just said. Now, next question. I remember a girl that actually just popped into my head. She played in the state netball league, so quite accomplished netballer. And she had knee issues, and she overheard a conversation about, I've tried this physio, I've tried another one. Like, when do people give up? People shouldn't give up. But she popped into the conversation, stuck her head in, and she said, I saw 7 physios before I found one that could help my knee. So I suppose the question is, how long do you persist with someone? And this is probably very hard to answer, but how long do you persist before you go, you know what, this isn't working. I don't think they're going to be able to fix me. It's time to try someone else.
Yep. If you're not seeing changes, if you're good at what you do and you're actually treating the problem area, you should see a change in a couple of appointments, like significant change. And it depends on the chronicity, it depends on chronic pain, depends on the conditions, all these other things. But if you're treating the right area, the nervous system will tell you very quickly, oh, I like that. I'm going to release the brakes on it. I'm going to improve movement. I'm going to reduce pain. If we didn't treat the right area, then the therapist needs to take a step back. Oh, maybe I'm treating the wrong area. I just had a patient. She was seeing a physio for a year and a half, and for her shoulder. And all they would do is the same mobilization of the shoulder, mold the shoulder, and then that's it for a year and a half.
I think there's
no
saying
change
around that, isn't there?
Yeah, like what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over. Now, I blame the therapist more than the patient, because I'm like, but they're making you worse. She's like, I would leave in pain all the time, but no change. I said, well, that's not worth it, right? The therapist should take a step back and be like, okay, what I'm doing isn't working. What else could it be? Is it the neck? Is it the breathing? Is it the rib cage? Is it the thoracic spine? Is it the pelvis? Like, this is why the way we do things, we look at the whole body first, and then we start to look at the parts and see which parts aren't moving. And we go after those stiff parts, and we go after the weak parts, and then we reintegrate it with movement patterns. Because a lot of times these injuries is actually a physics problem. So we'll use the shoulder, for example. The shoulder is the most mobile joint in the body. How often do people come with shoulder issues? A lot. But when somebody comes in, I got this, rotator cuff tear and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, cool. And I'm doing their passive range of motion. I'm like, well, range of motion is pretty good. Yeah, it's weak and painful, but you've got nerve tension coming from your neck. Your neck doesn't rotate to the left. You're stuck in this thoracic extension, like your T-spine doesn't move. So if your T-spine doesn't move, your neck doesn't move, guess where all those energy and forces are going into? The thing that moves really good, right? You're trying to throw overhead and you can't extend that thoracic spine. You're going to extend the shoulder more, right? If you have crappy core and you're trying to throw, guess what you're doing? You're throwing with the shoulder. So forces move to the area of least resistance. And typically what we'll see is the area of pain is typically the area that's moving too much, or the body's just using that more so. Like, for coming back to our world's strongest man, he had an overload issue on the right side because his left side wasn't working as well. And the brain knew that. So what did it do? It transferred forces to that stronger side. Same thing with mobility. If someone's not rotating through the thoracic spine and they don't rotate through their hips, because those are 2 rotation joints, and they come in with low back pain, well, guess what they're rotating into? The low back. Guess what's designed not to rotate? The low back. Those facet joints, they bang into one another. It is designed to flex and extend and side bend, not rotate. So if you have a hip joint that doesn't rotate and a thoracic spine that doesn't rotate, physics. Well, you're moving too much. So how about we don't manipulate the back? How about we don't bang on that lumbar spine? Because it's not the problem. The problem is the 2 joints above and below, they're not moving. So no matter what you do to the low back, it doesn't matter because it's going to come back.
It just makes you think of, I'll call this a horror story. It just makes you think of one occasion where this guy still has trouble with back pain. So he's been seeing the same physio for a long time. And I've sort of suggested, do you think maybe you could try someone else for a second opinion? And they said back, oh, but he's such a good bloke.
Right.
Anyway.
He's so nice. He listens.
So nice.
I was like, I get it. Like, people are nice. And,
And this guy's just put up with back issues forever. And I am so annoyed. And I don't want to be here to bag people, but
no.
but he has never in all this time taught this guy how to unhinge.
No.
Like that would be the first place to start, I would think.
Sure.
And I'm still trying to teach this guy how to hinge. And and I've even said, can I contact your physio? It hasn't happened, but
Sure.
that's why, again, get the gym attached to the physio, get him out there adding load, and then straight away it's like, oh, this guy can't even do a deadlift properly. Like that should be the first place you'd start, I would think.
Yeah, but even before hinging, well, if they're limited with their hinging, is it nerve tension? They might have some nerve compression coming from their neck, T-spine, or lumbar spine. If they have a very rounded thoracic spine, and they can't extend or reverse that curve out, well, they're going to move into the lower back. So do they even have sufficient thoracic extension? Do the hips even move? Maybe there's some hip capsule issues.
So you're really big on the nervous system.
Yes.
So you've been doing this for 20 years.
Yes.
In Canada, would you say the majority of physios are in the same headspace? Or like if you go back to when you were 3 or 4 or 5 years into this, were you so big on the nervous system, or this is just you've gained the knowledge and this is where you've ended up?
Yeah. I've gained the knowledge over time. So once I started, I've done over 100 courses, certifications, because I'm like, I like problem solving. I want to help people. I want the knowledge. And then once I started looking through the lens of the nervous system and what's priority to the nervous system, then it started to become more clear. I'm like, oh, you know what? Like this central tube called our dura that covers the spine, if that is not sliding around like it's supposed to, it's going to create muscle tension everywhere because it doesn't like to stretch. So you do a simple little slump test and all of a sudden realize, oh, this tension's coming from your neck. We got to release the neck in order to release the back because it's a tube. Everything is tubes and wires. That's how we're designed. And if you kink or compress one end of the tube, well, the tube's not sliding up and down. Well, what comes out of that tube? All the nerves. So now you've got nerve tension coming from a central problem up above. So we have to look at the important structures for survival. What is the most important thing to the nervous system? The brain. Cool. What's the second most important? Spinal cord. Because if you damage those two things, you're not living very long. And they control everything. They're constantly looking for threats and to detect, is this a safe space? What was that noise, right? And then it's just like, do I need to mobilize the body to either fight or flight? But if those structures aren't healthy or they're being compromised in some way, well, the whole system shuts down. It's not going to move like it's supposed to. And, I tell my clients, I'm like, look, we got this nerve tension coming from your neck that's going all the way into your leg. And, your brain is happy to sacrifice the muscles. It will tear that hamstring before it tears a nerve because your brain knows, well, if I tear that nerve, I'm in big trouble. So it's like, you know what? I'm going to cause a tear in this hamstring to slow you down so you don't keep putting stretch through this. Mm-hmm. And I the other thing I tell my clients, I'm like, muscles are dumb. They're only doing what the brain tells them to do, and often to protect, stabilize, or compensate. Now, as soon as you start figuring out why that muscle's tight in the first place, now you can start treating the cause. And now the muscle starts to calm down and it starts to slide and move like it's supposed to, or fire up like it's supposed to. Mm-hmm. So coming back to what is the primary system that runs everything? It's the nervous system. It's its primary job. Don't die. Look for threats, avoid harm and pain, and look for safety. That if you're going to look at, distill it down to what its primary goal is, that's it. But if it's starting to feel unsafe in the body, it's going to create guarding and protection or inhibition. And now everything's getting disorganized and dysregulated.
And you don't know Australian physio, but is this physio 101, this whole nervous system being at the top?
It should be. It's interesting because I almost failed physio school because of neuro. And when I left physio school, I was like, I'm never touching this again. I was like, I'm an ortho sports guy. That's it. And then, you get into these chronic injuries, like, why isn't this tendon healing? Why isn't this back pain should be gone right now? We've done the core, we've done this. And then once I started figuring out, I'm like, God damn it, the nervous system runs everything. And then once I started going after the neural structures first and the nervous system, all the orthopedic stuff started getting better faster. But to answer your question, they don't. We are taught neural screens in physio school, and we take students all the time. And unfortunately, they're still teaching it the same way from 20 years since I graduated. And I'm like, okay, yes, neural screens, like you should be doing a neural screen on every single client coming in because everyone's neuro until proven otherwise. You don't, what conducts pain? Nerves. Well, what's transmitting information to the brain? Nerves. So should we not look at what the nerves are doing and communicating with the body first before we start looking at these tendon issues or muscle issues or joint issues? And it's not organized. They don't emphasize the importance of it with every single patient because they're like, well, if somebody's got muscle atrophy or weakness, then you should check the myotomes. I'm like, you should check them all the time, because if the myotomes are off, those muscles aren't working.
Sorry to keep hogging the questions here, Justin, but
Yeah.
there's a lot more on this topic.
Yeah.
What would be a list of things that do compromise that nervous system? Like it could be a car crash, it could be like a sudden, like an accident,
Impact, trauma, sitting all day, that will compress the nervous system. So think about people sitting at their desk all day. What am I doing with my neck? I'm kinking the hose. So I'm compressing the nerves at my neck, which is the top end of the spinal cord, and it can disrupt flow all the way down to my lower back. Now, then I go and stand up, and the neck is still in that position, and then I'm adding rotation from walking. So now, not only am I compressing the nerves up here, I'm also torquing them at the bottom. So now we're doing two things that the nerves don't like: compression and torsion. And do you think all the muscles associated with those nerves, they're going to be happy? Nope. Nerves that's like, I'm gonna make everything feel tight right now because I'm not happy, because I need to protect you from yourself. So once we start looking at those central important structures that are key for survival and take care of those first, well, then now the nervous system and the muscle system starts to relax. It starts to organize and move like it's supposed to. And now we can start to rebuild from the ground up. Well, let's go back on the ground. Let's do some rocking and some rolling, get the spine to open up, twist, move around, set the slings, do some crawling patterns, get into kneeling, and then get into standing. Like how do babies learn to move? From the ground up. And one of the posts I did with, and Mitchell's okay with me talking about this, World's Strongest Man, I had to teach him how to roll like a baby. He couldn't do it, but it made his balance better. So I was like, I gave him what his nervous system needed. I needed to recalibrate him on the ground so that when he's in standing doing his strongman stuff, it wasn't hurting him. But I needed to reconnect that pattern that he'd lost. And most people, how often do they go back down to the ground to check things? Almost never. But that's how the nervous system organized. That's how we learn to move and create that relationship with gravity, is on the floor in these different spine positions: spine supported, suspended, stacked. But we're very good at compensating now because, we can get along and keep walking even with this little nagging thing, but for how long? And then all of a sudden you do a sprint or you do something more ballistic and there it goes. Right. Yeah. And simply because maybe we had a balance issue, or maybe we couldn't roll effectively to the left, and it created kind of this lack of control on that one side of your body.
Yeah. I would imagine for the elderly population too, this is crucial. I'm thinking about my in-laws, my father-in-law in particular, who was a painter his whole career, and it's, he's up and his shoulder and his neck. And I've told him, I'll try to get him into my gym, and he just won't come. Because, and I guess as an older person, you're like, well, if I pick things up, I'm going to hurt myself. If I start to, and so he goes regularly to the physio and has only ever used a band, and that's it. And sure. It would be, I guess you would get a lot of pushback from the older population, right? In terms of, I need to slow down. I actually need to rest my body because it hurts.
Right. So, I mean, you can understand that perspective, right? Because if you're in this position, this upright position, and it hurts already, probably loading it in that position will most likely make it hurt more. Okay. That's fair. Now, what's the biggest fear for the elderly? Falling. Right. So in order to prevent falls, we need to be strong in our legs, especially the decelerators. Now, we have a couple strategies. We have an ankle, hip, step strategy. And then what if the step strategy doesn't work? Where do we end up? On the ground. Okay. Well, I hope you have a good relationship with the ground, because sometimes falls are not avoidable. But if you have a good relationship with the ground, you know how to drop your center of mass, you know how to turn yourself into a little ball, and then you can roll out of it, or at least collapse and absorb those forces with your body, not with your hip or your shoulder. And the best way to do that, I find, is get that population back on the floor and get them comfortable. That means quadrupeds, crawling, transitioning like babies, sitting on their hips, getting them to do some rolling patterns. Like, you know, if they have a good relationship with the ground, if they end up meeting it unexpectedly, they know what to do there. That's the point of training. It's in case shit. It's your insurance policy. Well, if I end up in this situation, do I know what to do there? And if you practice there and all of a sudden you end up there, your nervous system knows, oh, we're going to the ground. I know what to do. I know how to drop that synergy.
More of this in since
Yeah.
watching that. You did this video on Instagram, which I watched last night, and I'm definitely, you're going to change the way I think about my programming.
Yep. So even with warm-ups, our warm-ups, everybody coming in, regardless of whether you're general population or athlete, you warm up from the ground up. How did we learn to move? From the ground up. You start with rolling, rocking, okay, get over the shoulders, right? Get in some quadruped, hip transitions, do some side planks, do some glute bridges, like fire up all the muscles around the center that we need for power and control. And then work your way up into standing. Because what this does is it starts to set the old programming in place. You can use the ground movement transitions as a form of screening. You're like, ooh, that feels a little tight. Cool. Spend a little more time there to open up and breathe into that. Now, oh, it loosened up. Great. But it's a safe place to do that because there's no load and there's no risk of falls and there's no compression because you can open it up so easily and nicely. And now, because we started to move the way we learned how to move in the first place, the nervous system and those old programs, they start to reorganize from the ground up. Right. And we can also find those little tight areas or those little areas that may have been neglected simply by creating different patterns in relation to gravity and the ground before we go up into standing and start loading and moving.
Yeah. So for the average person going to the gym, normal person, I go to the gym 3 days a week, but, you know, I have my program, some strength, some cardio. That kind of movement pattern early on, like going and doing a warm up rather than walking for 4 minutes on a treadmill or 3 minutes on a cross trainer or five minutes on a bike and then going and doing bench press, probably not the best use of your time.
Right. Yeah. Well, the problem is, you know, you don't know how they're walking, you know, are the hips tight from standing all day or sitting all day, but you get on the ground and you start moving the hips around and the hips start to open up and you get access to those muscles again. So if you have to pick something up, your spine and everything's moving and stable like it's supposed to, and your hips are moving. But walking, we can kind of just shuffle along. You know, just because somebody can walk doesn't mean they're doing it well. Just because someone can run doesn't mean they've earned the right to do it. Again, like I look at running as the pinnacle of human movement, but if you can't stand on one leg for 10 seconds with your eyes closed, how do you think running's going for you when you're doing it ballistically with multiple times body weight? Probably not that good. So having these prerequisites of movement are key in order to kind of prevent injuries from happening, from doing these things that shouldn't hurt us. They should make us stronger. But if you don't have these prerequisites of mobility, balance, control, and strength, then you haven't earned the right to swing a kettlebell or do muscle ups or sprint or lift something heavy because you haven't reorganized and proven that your structure's balanced to a degree that, you know, is relatively safe.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting. As a runner myself, you go through a series of warm-ups, but I actually haven't got on the ground. That's not something I've done yet.
I just say start on the ground and then work your way up into standing and then do your runner stuff and watch how much lighter you're going to feel. Like you're going to have that extra spring. It's not going to take as long to do your running warm-up because your nervous system's ready. It's feeling all the muscles that you need for running. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I got a little more balance in my step. There's less resistance in my body because the nervous system said, oh, I like what you've done. I'm going to take the brakes off. So by taking the brakes off, now you got more muscle, you got more motor output, right? But the nervous system is always going to protect you. Things feel tight sometimes because the nervous system might be protecting something.
Yeah. That's interesting. So I did a yoga class yesterday. It was focused primarily on hips. Where do you stand yoga, Pilates in terms of helping? Obviously, it helps movement. Is it something that you would prescribe to people generally?
Yeah. So if I have someone who's very stiff, right, I say you need to do some extra mobility stuff and do it in the form of yoga, Pilates, whatever it is. If someone is coming in and they are very flexible, I'm like, you need to carry stuff and crawl and lift. I'll give you an example. I had one client come in a couple of years ago, does yoga. Cool. She's like, I got neck pain, shoulder pain, back pain from standing at work. as a cashier. I said, okay, cool. I said, all right, touch your toes. She puts her head through her legs. I said, okay, well, no problem there. All right, give me a little back bend. Almost goes into a full back bridge. I was like,
Yeah.
All right, cool. Now stand on one leg. Couldn't do it. I said, all right. I go through all my range of motion testing. There's no mobility problems here. But when I was testing muscle strength, there was a ton of strength problems. I said, how often do you yoga? She's like 9 times a week. I said, you know, there's only 7 days in the week. She's like, oh, I go twice on Saturday and Sunday. Okay. So, looking at how well she moves, I'm like, you're not doing yoga for 2 weeks. You're going to be here in the gym with the movement coaches, and you're going to be doing dead bugs and rolling and balance beam work, and you're going to lift stuff, and you're going to carry stuff, and you're going to crawl, and you're going to hang. 2 weeks, no pain. Because she was so far on the mobility spectrum, her nervous system said, you've overstretched everything. She overstretched all the muscles, all her postural muscles, all those tonic muscles to help you hold the body upright. They were fatiguing.
Yeah.
We had to give her back strength and control through ranges and endurance.
Yeah.
Now, on the other end of the spectrum, I work with a lot of power lifters, very stiff, right? But they're coming in with neck pain, back pain, scap pain. Okay. Got 2 individuals, very different ends of the spectrum, same pain. It's like, you need to do a lot of mobility stuff to remove resistance in your body. Yes, the resistance in his body helps him lift, right? Because he needs that tension. He needs that stiffness to lift the weight. But he went so far on the side of stiffness, it was causing too much compression in his system, and his nervous system was unhappy. So we needed to do things to open him up a bit, to create at least enough space to remove his pain, but not interfere with his performance. So to answer your question, it depends.
Yep.
It depends on the person and what they're coming in with.
You've got a physio that comes in, and we have a few discussions, and he said his take on this was there's basically 2 types of people. And they're the 2 you just described. He said you could nearly every time put people in one of those 2, the hypermobile and the stiff type.
Yep.
Yeah.
But then you also have to look at, this is why it's important that you look at the individual parts, because you can have stiff segments, but then a hypermobile segment, because guess where all that energy and forces are going? Into that hypermobile segment, because it's easy. The nervous system's like, well, I'm going to take the path of least resistance. So I'm just going to keep loading that area. So it depends. Sometimes you can't just categorize people because different parts move differently. And when they are coming with these overuse problems or, painful areas, you got to start looking at, well, are they hitting their optimal ranges of motion, right? This is why it's important that we compare as therapists, active and passive range of motion. What can you do versus what can I do? So I'll give you an example. People come in, they're like, I have a stiff neck. I'm like, okay. So they're standing here, and then when I get them laying on the table, I can take their head past 90 degrees. I said, you don't have a stiff neck. You have a hypermobile neck, because they can't do it, but I can. You have a motor control problem. You have a strength issue. You're using the wrong muscles to perform the task. Your relationship to gravity and the neck position is off. Now, if they laid on the table and I'm like, and I can't rotate it, I'm like, oh, okay, you can't move it and I can't move it. Therefore, we have a soft tissue or joint restriction. So now I need manual therapy to find that range of motion for you. And then we retrain it with patterns and strength, right? So that's why it's important that we're looking at all the system first, but then the individual parts. Because if a part of the body is not moving like it's supposed to, well, the nervous system is going to avoid stiffness, and it's going to move where it's easy, just because it's energy efficient. And that's what physics tells us.
Yeah. So for our gym members, our EFM gym members and people who hit the gym regularly, a lot of them will get a program.
Yep.
And that's it. That's their lifetime program. There might be 4 days.
Yeah.
I've always asked people to change their patterns, change their things. It's very much ingrained in the gym habit, right? I go to Monday and I do 4 different leg exercises, and then I'm done, and I just do them forever. That's I'd suggest leading to some of these misalignment, imbalance problems.
Yeah, I mean, if you're specializing in something, or say you need to work on a part of the body that's lagging, then doing extra volume in that area is a good thing. But you do have to mix it up, because repetitive strain injuries can come from anywhere. Repetitive strain comes from sitting all day. Repetitive strain comes from standing all day. Repetitive strain comes from me working on my computer and looking like this all day, right? Compressing all this, stretching all this, all of a sudden I can't turn. So it's important that, we mix up the patterns because the body moves in so many different ways. And if we're only focusing on, say, like the sagittal plane, moving forwards and backwards, but we're ignoring frontal plane and transverse plane, well, the muscles that do those things, they get left behind. Now, when I'm moving in the sagittal plane, squatting, lunging, deadlifting, these transverse muscles and these side bending frontal plane muscles, they become stabilizers because their job now is to stay static to prevent me from deviating from that path. But if all I'm doing is strengthening the sagittal muscles, these muscles get left behind. So when we're programming, it's important to be like, okay, we're doing a sagittal plane push movement here. I'm going to do some side steps with a band to work the frontal plane. And then I'm going to do some medicine ball throws or some chops to work the transverse plane, because the body moves in 3 different dimensions. And if you're not training all those muscles all the time, or at least mixing it up, well, then we overuse certain big muscles, which is common, like especially sagittal plane, forwards and backwards muscles. But then all those other little small muscles, glute medius, minimus, hip rotators, rotator cuff, trunk rotators, they get left behind. Yeah. So now all of a sudden we've got overuse and overdevelopment in those sagittal muscles, but then we have underuse and disuse in those other 2 planed type of muscles. Mm. So when we're creating programs, think of 3 planes of movement. All right, we're going to do deadlifts for this one. And then, so that's our A1. And our A2 is we're going to do some Palloff press rotations. And then our A3 is we're going to do a farmer carry on one side of the body, because now we're working on anti-side bend. There you go, right? And then your next B block is, okay, let's do lateral squats with a barbell or kettlebells. So now we're working frontal plane. And then we're going to do some med ball tosses for explosiveness if we did some stability stuff with the band. And then we're going to do some, let's say, single leg deadlifts, because now it's back in the sagittal plane, but single limb.
So Tom, when you started off at university doing physio, did you always see yourself becoming like a high-end trainer, PT? I don't want to just...
I was, my undergrad, I did my undergrad in the US as an athletic trainer, athletic therapy here in Canada. And I was down there on a soccer scholarship. I was a goalkeeper. So coming from an AT background, dealing with athletes all the time. So we would do rehab, on-field, packaging, assessment, in clinic rehab, and then return to sport. So, most ATs are strength and conditioning coaches. So coming from that previous background of AT strength and conditioning, I took that into physiotherapy. And physiotherapy just gave me a broader scope of what the body does and is composed of, and my scope of practice increases. So I always came from that movement performance side of things, and I just took that into the physiotherapy realm. But I used those tools that I knew before into rehab because I saw that they worked, and they worked really quick.
Cool.
But yeah, to answer your question, I always saw myself, I just love sport. I love moving. You see my Instagram, I'm at gymnastics, bouncing around, experimenting, always like learning new things and refining. I mean, that's the fun part of our scope.
I can see why you did it, because as a PT, and I think a lot of PTs feel this too, we know that our knowledge has quite a low ceiling compared to you. And sometimes I just feel like, I wish I knew more about this, and then I could be of better service to people. And that's where I have to refer. But it's great. You don't have to refer anymore. You've just gone and learnt it all. And I'm sure you keep learning still. But But
this is where I feel like we've done it in our clinic. My wife and I, we opened Home Physio 13 years ago, just the 2 of us, and we've grown it to 2 clinics now and 30 plus staff. And the philosophy that we had was, it was always movement based. You're like, okay, you're on the table. We're going to change the inputs. We're going to get things. We're going to help with pain. This is not where you get better. This is where you feel better. You get better in the gym. So we've always had that philosophy. And then trying to take what was in here and teach it to other people. I knew how to get there, but I didn't know how to teach people how to get there. And that's where the AMT came in, because I'm like, this became a training manual for our staff. So now everyone's speaking the same language. Everyone's got a framework and a system to work from. Look at priorities of neurology, look at the movement system, look at the parts, look at the orthopedics, look at whatever, right? Like, it's an algorithm. And then once we saw how well it worked here, then I'm like, well, we can teach this to anybody, because we have movement coaches, right? We have kinesiologists here, because they're a big part of what we do from a rehab perspective. So we assess, we'll help with pain, we do the laser, we do all the manual therapy, but then we work alongside the movement coaches, and the movement coaches are working with the clients for an hour in the gym. We're just typing up all the dysfunctions. They have the T-spine, hip. All right, they know, because they've gone through the AMT system. They know exactly what I'm saying, and they know exactly like what to do for progression regression. But I've also given them a tool where when they have their own personal training clients, they do what's called a SAM scan, self-awareness movement scan, looking at 3 simple cerebellar tests, and then some global movements and it takes 3 minutes. So you can scan them 3 minutes. Oh, that's off. All right, what are my exercises to correct that? Go do your exercises for 2-3 minutes, come back, rescan. Oh, it's clear. Great. Let's go do our general warm-up. So I've given a tool to both clinicians, but as well as movement strength coaches to, just because someone's coming in with this, like, oh, this is tight. Well, you don't need to refer them out. You need to find out why. And it's very simple if you start breaking down the parts and the pieces, but looking at the system first. So we kind of bridge the gap between rehab and performance, because like I said, they're one and the same, right? World's Strongest Man comes in to see me with a squat, back squatting causes back and hip pain. He needed rehab stuff, technically rehab, but it unlocked his performance, but I gave him what he needed. So it depends on the individual. And if you use some of the neurology, you can increase performance really quickly. We get our hockey players, I whip cards at them and they got to catch them out of the air, right? They letter ball. I've got, some of my NHL guys, I have a hockey goalie, and I'm like, this is relevant. Pucks are coming in. So you at least stop them. You don't have to catch them, but, get out of the way and put a hand there. So we do all kinds of fun little visual drills, reaction drills. And then, all right, great. We just primed you. Let's go deadlift and let's go jump over some hurdles. So we prime the nervous system too. So it's not just rehab. You can use it for high performance, depending on what the individual needs.
Yeah. So if people want to find you, your website, so the AMT system is amtcertified.ca.
Correct.
Yeah, and you can go up. We've been on the website, Wade and I were a little bit excited about it all. Sign up. You have a couple of modules there, don't you?
So there's 2 parts. So the level 1 has about 22 modules. Don't get overwhelmed. Some of them are short, but we go through all the parts, and it's in the exact order in which you would use it. And then level 2 gets into more of the deeper neurology of the visual system, vestibular, proprioception, and then into loaded resisted range of motion, kettlebells, running, ballistics, all the kind of higher performance stuff on the tail end of level 2. But we, it's an online on demand, so you can do it at your own pace, but we have now attached a cohort. So there's weekly coaching sessions that go along with it, where people come on with their questions to kind of integrate, answer their questions and learn how to go through the system more effectively, which we're actually starting another cohort in January 2026.
Yeah. And for who would you encourage to do that? So physios, personal trainers, and everywhere in between.
Chiropractors, osteopaths. So, the feedback from some of the outside physio people, our chiropractor, he's gone through it and he's realized, he's like, because a lot of the testing in the AMT, it's confirming what he's treating. Like it's measuring change. And he's just like, oh, I don't need to change what I do. He's like, I just plug it into the system, but I use a lot of the neurological stuff and the movement testing or muscle testing to confirm, like show the patient, hey, this isn't working. Do your adjustment, do your treatment. Look, it's switched back on. Cool. Now we can load that up. So it's just validating what they're doing. And even massage therapists, because how often people go in for massage, they don't look at it as treatment. I'm like, they are therapists. They are treating stuff. But people go, well, I go to massage to feel good. We have our massage therapist, like put them through a movement scan, right? Oh, my shoulder's tight. Great. Check nerve mobility first, right? Check muscle testing and then treat it and then measure after. Because now you show them, look at the change that was made. Look, no nerve tension. Oh, pec's not tight anymore. Right? So it's always setting that movement baseline in the beginning to show them where they're at, intervene, and then recheck after to confirm changes that have been made. So now the patient sees where they were and where they now are. And the cool thing with the nervous system, when you treat the right area, movement and change happens really quick. And now you got buy-in, because people are just like, oh my God, I can touch my toes. I haven't been able to do that in 10 years. Oh, I can put my hand behind my back in one treatment. Yeah, because we treated the cause, not just the symptom.
It's a good way to win their trust as you start up with.
You look like a magician. And you're like, no, I just treated, I looked at the body, I saw what it needed, and I applied the right inputs. That's all I did.
Yeah.
Right. And then we make it permanent by adding resistance to it, bands, dumbbells, kettlebells, whatever it is.
Yeah, they're just so there's layers. I mean, I think we all get and if you go for a massage, right? You know, my shoulder's really sore.
Yep.
It goes beyond giving it a rub, right? So
Yeah.
if you want some lasting results,
Yep.
go beyond giving it a rub and hoping that it'll, you know, change.
Yeah. It validates, you know, you are creating change in the body through the inputs that you're applying it. Inputs, massage, needling, stretching, manipulation, like name it, whatever it is. We're just changing inputs in the body. And the nervous system's like, the nervous system is looking at, oh, do I like this? Yes or no? And if it likes it, oh, I'm going to take the brakes off. If it doesn't like it, puts the brakes on. So it's an immediate feedback loop. That's why we use movement and muscle testing to look at what's happening in the body. And then we intervene and we check it again. Did something change? Because if we did something right, things move and feel better.
Foam rollers.
Yes.
Is there a place for them? You hear, like,
Yes.
if you do your own research, you find out that they're the best thing ever and they're a waste of time. So,
So I've learned not everything works for everybody, but something will work for somebody.
Beautiful.
And foam rollers, I find value in them. I know when I pin it and I stretch it, all of a sudden my shoulder mobility improves. But now it's open, it's created space in my shoulder for better pull-ups. You know, if I've got tight calves or tight hamstring, I don't spend a ton of time on it. I scan the body. I look for those trigger points and those tight areas. I'm like, okay, I pin it and I move it. Now, foam roller, if you're taking quick swipes over it, you're actually going to facilitate muscles, right? Because it's causing quick stretch. If you want to create inhibition or get muscles to relax, you got to hold it on there and then move around it, right? So for example, if you got a tight glute, you pin it and then you activate the adductors. You lift the leg. So now you're getting that reciprocal inhibition. All right, great. That trigger point's gone because you can't stretch trigger points. If you've got a trigger point, that's neurological protection potentially. So you got to figure out, well, muscles are dumb. What are we protecting? Maybe the muscle's being overused because maybe another muscle around it is not firing. So after you use the foam roller, make sure you start firing up stuff around it so it doesn't come back. So there is use. It's
like if you've got someone with lazy glutes and they're always starting with some banded side walks, whatever you want to call them. Is there cases where people just have to do that forever, or over time that their glutes become more active? I guess it depends what they're doing for the rest of the day. If they're sitting down for 10 hours a day, they're always going to have to activate their glutes.
Yeah. So the sitting for 8 to 10 hours a day is going to override anything you do with the glutes for an hour. So I tell people, you got tight glutes, you sit all day, they're not tight, they're overstretched. So yeah, you're going to have to get on the floor, do some glute bridges, do some clams, get the glutes, and all of a sudden, oh, my low back feels better. Well, yeah, because you're using your glutes again. When you sit on a muscle, you're stretching it all day. Well, what happens when we stretch a muscle all day? It relaxes. It doesn't need more stretching. That's the last thing it needs. And then people blame the hip flexors. Oh, my hip flexors are tight. No, it could be your glutes are just weak or they're not turned on and you're not using them for walking. So do some glute bridges. Now go for a walk and do enough repetitions where it burns, because your brain can't find what it can't feel. And if it can't feel the muscle, it won't fire it.
Yeah.
So again, the nervous system's like, I can't feel that muscle. I'm not using it. Oh, I can feel the quads. I'm going to keep using those. It's like the upper traps. Oh, my upper traps are so tight. No, it's just because you're not using your lower traps to hold you in place, and your serratus anterior has not been used. So guess what? Your brain's going to keep using what it can feel. And it's like, well, I'm going to keep using these muscles that are tight all the time. And I'm just going to make them more tight because I'm going to make them do work that they're not designed to do as well.
Yeah. No, good. Thank you.
Yeah. So, Tom, thank you. I mean, we've covered a very broad kind of topic here. And I think you've been amazing at distilling it down for us laymen and hopefully everyone out there. We'd love to get you back on to go into maybe some deep dives at another point.
For sure.
If people want to do, and Wade and I have been talking about maybe doing the course, it's amtcertified.ca is the website.
Correct.
Go and check it out for everyone from physiotherapists to trainers and everywhere in between. You're a really good watch on Instagram. It's at swales.tom, isn't it?
Swales.tom, yes.
Yeah. And at Tommy Swales is your YouTube channel.
Yeah.
People can find you there and ask you any questions, and hopefully, you know, they're inspired to do the course like Wade and I are right now.
Great. Yep.
And
Exactly.
And if you're in the Toronto area, Physio, you know, two sites. Are they both in Toronto?
Both. Well, we're an hour north of Toronto. We're in Barrie.
Yeah.
The city's called Barrie, Ontario, but we're just north of Toronto. Yeah.
Okay. And good luck to the Toronto Blue Jays as they take on the evil empire, the LA Dodgers, in the World Series. Hopefully, they can win one for Canada. 1992 since they've won a World Series?
92. Yeah. 92.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, we were all still at school back then, young and hopeful. All right. Thanks a lot, Tom. Really appreciate that time is fantastic. Really interesting.
Perfect. Thanks for having me, fellas.
All right. That'll be the EFM Health Club podcast for another week. We'll catch you soon.